Today, we're digging into the incredible history of Laos, a nation that's been shaped by everything from golden ages and colonial power plays to some of the most intense conflicts of the 20th century.
And that really brings us to the big question for this whole story. How does a country find its own identity when it's constantly being pulled in different directions by massive outside forces? The story of Laos is a perfect, and I mean perfect, example of that struggle.
So first, let's get our bearings. Laos is right here, smack in the middle of the Indochina Peninsula. Now, being landlocked, surrounded by bigger, more powerful countries like Thailand and Vietnam, well, that single fact has shaped almost everything about its history. It's been a crossroads for trade, sure, but also for culture and, yeah, a whole lot of conflict.
Okay, so to really get a handle on modern Laos, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going back to its beginnings, a time of incredible unity that sadly just couldn't last.
It all kicks off back in the 14th century with this unified kingdom called Lan Sang. And for a while it was a real golden age. But by the early 1700s, things fell apart. Internal squabbles split the kingdom into three much weaker states. You can probably guess what happened next. That division made them an easy target, and by 1778, their neighbor, Siam, had swooped in and made them all protectorates. The nail in the coffin came in 1829, when a failed rebellion led to Siam just completely taking over the whole territory.
But then, the great power games of the 19th century brought a brand new player into the mix, France. For Laos, this just meant swapping one colonial master for another, and it was a change that would totally rewrite their future.
And here's the date it all happened. 1893, France got into a conflict with Siam and basically forced them to hand over Laos. Just like that, it was absorbed into what became French Indochina. This kicked off nearly 60 years of French colonial rule.
Now, the French were systematic. Their policies weren't about building up Laos, they were all about control and exploitation. They intentionally kept the country divided, they looted its natural resources, and they slapped on heavy taxes. But here's a really crucial part. They brought in Vietnamese officials and soldiers to help run the place. That move right there planted seeds of ethnic tension that would explode into conflict decades later.
This divide and rule strategy was actually pretty clever, in a very cynical way. You can see how it worked here. In one part of the country, Luang Prabang, they used indirect rule. They kept the local king around as a figurehead, to keep things calm. But everywhere else, nope. They got rid of local rulers and put French officials directly in charge. It was a classic strategy to make sure no unified resistance could ever get off the ground.
And it wasn't just about political control. This quote really hits the nail on the head. The whole point of their education system wasn't to actually educate the Lao people. It was to make them more French. Local culture, local traditions, all of it was pushed aside for French language and values. It was a cultural takeover. All right, fast forward to the end of World War II. The old European empires are crumbling, and that sets the stage for the next, incredibly dramatic chapter for Laos, a long, violent struggle that would mean the end of French rule, the end of the monarchy, and the birth of something entirely new. So Laos gets its official independence from France in 1949, but any celebration was cut short. The country immediately got sucked into the Cold War. It turned into a brutal civil war between the royal government, which was backed by the US, and the communist Pathet Lao, who were supported by North Vietnam. After years and years of devastating fighting, they finally reached a ceasefire in 1973, but by 1975, it was all over. The Pathet Lao took complete control.
And 1975, that year was a massive turning point. The Pathet Lao's victory didn't just mean a new government, it meant the end of an institution that had been around for 600 years. The monarchy was officially gone.
So what happened to the royals? This quote tells the grim story. After the takeover, the king, the queen, and the rest of the family were taken from their palace and sent away to so-called re-education camps run by the new communist government. And they never came back. The last king of Laos, Sasavang Vathana, his wife, Queen Khamphui, and the crown prince, they are all believed to have died in those camps. It was just a tragic, brutal end to a dynasty that had lasted for centuries. So with the monarchy gone and the war over, the new leaders started building a brand new state. And this was their blueprint for what they called the Lao People's Democratic Republic.
The rule book for this new nation is the Constitution of 1991. This is the document that formally laid out the political and economic system that's still in place today.
So on paper,
The Constitution calls Laos a people's democratic state, where all the power supposedly belongs to the people. But you have to ask, how does that power actually get used?
Well, Article 3 gives you the real answer. It says that all that power is exercised through the Lao People's Revolutionary Party, which it calls the leading nucleus. In plain English, that means Laos is a one-party state. The party is in charge of everything. And the whole government runs on this principle called democratic centralism. It sounds like a contradiction, right? But what it really means is that decisions are made at the very top by the party leadership, and everyone below them has to follow those decisions, no questions asked. It's classic top-down control.
But you can't just declare a new republic and write a new constitution and expect all the deep scars from the past to just disappear. The echoes of that war are still incredibly loud in Laos today.
Just look at this number. 9,473. That's how many people were killed or injured by unexploded bombs, UXO, in just the 2 decades after the war officially ended. You see, during the Civil War, Laos became, per person, the most heavily bombed country in human history. Millions of those bombs never went off.
And this isn't just a sad story from the past. As this quote makes crystal clear, it's a constant, devastating problem right now. It makes it dangerous to farm, to build roads, to add on to schools. It holds back the entire country's development. It's a lethal legacy of war that people have to live with every single day.
And at the same time, another piece of Lao history is still alive, but it's thousands of miles away. The grandson of that last king, Prince Sullivan Savong, still maintains a claim to the throne. He lives in exile, probably in Paris, and he's recognized by a royal Lao government in exile. It's this quiet, powerful reminder of the nation that used to be.
Which really brings us back full circle to this final, heavy question. For Laos, the past isn't just something you read about in a history book. It is a physical, deadly threat, literally buried in the ground. And the challenge of building a better future is tied directly to the slow, dangerous work of clearing away the explosive remnants of its long and violent history.